Most people think there are only two factions in Transformers, the Autobots and the Decepticons. They are wrong. The franchise has spent 40 years building a multiverse with at least a dozen factions, and almost none of them mean what they did when they started. By the end of this, you'll know what every major faction actually is, where it came from, and why the entire war you've been watching since 1984 was started by someone you've barely heard of. Autobots. Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Ironhide, the good guys in every Transformers cartoon, comic, and movie since 1984. Every Transformers continuity has them. But what an Autobot actually is changes completely depending on which continuity you're watching. In the original G1 cartoon, the Autobots started as consumer goods, slave robots built by an alien race called the Quintessons, designed to be appliances and laborers. Their rebellion was led by a robot called A3, who would later be remembered as Alpha Trion. They were not warriors, they were workers who picked up weapons. In the IDW comics, the Autobots didn't exist until Orion Pax, a beat cop, read a manifesto called Towards Peace. The author was Megatron. Pax was so moved by the writing that he founded the Autobots in response to the corruption Megatron exposed. The hero of the comic was Megatron's first reader. In Transformers 1 in 2024, the Autobots aren't even a faction yet for most of the film. They're cogless miners who can't transform at all. Optimus only christens them Autobots in the final scene after Sentinel is dead and the cogs are restored. And in Skybound's Energon universe, the current comic series that won 2 Eisner Awards in 2024, the Autobots are already at war when humanity finds them. No origin, no setup, just survival. One continuity note worth flagging. The questions Megatron uses to expose the Senate in IDW's Chaos Theory in 2011 are nearly verbatim quotes from the late British politician Tony Benn. 5 questions about democracy he asked in Parliament. The most famous Decepticon manifesto in comic history was written by an English MP. The Autobots aren't who you thought they were. And in some continuities, they never were. Every Autobot fights for a cause. The faction built to oppose them was built from the opposite belief. Decepticons. The face on every Transformers villain since 1984, Megatron's army, built as the Autobots' mirror. But the mirror is darker than fans realize. The Decepticon insignia isn't a corporate logo. It's the literal face of a dead prime they worship. In the original G1, the Decepticons were the other half of the Quintesson product line. Mass-market military slave robots. The Autobots were sold as appliances. The Decepticons were sold as soldiers. In the IDW comics, the Decepticons started as a class revolutionary movement. The faction's name comes from a slogan that appeared in Megatron's writing, "You are being deceived." It was a working-class manifesto. They became villains by accident after the war went on too long. In Transformers 1, the Decepticons don't exist for almost the entire film. They're a different faction with a different name. And when they finally do form, Megatron carves the face of Megatronus Prime into D16's chest. That face becomes the Decepticon insignia, a scar that became an army. In Skybound, the Decepticons are at war with themselves. Soundwave defeated Starscream. Starscream's loyalists came back. Issue 18, May 2025, Devastator vs. Bruticus. Decepticon vs. Decepticon. The most violent fight in modern Transformers comics is between 2 Decepticon teams. They're not a military, they're a death cult, built around a prime who killed his own siblings. The Decepticons aren't an army, they're a religion. Both factions exist because something older built them, used them, and then tried to put them back in chains. Quintessons. 5-faced judges. Sharkticons, the 1986 movie villains most fans only half remember. Across the multiverse, the Quintessons are usually the answer to one question. Who built the Transformers? But they didn't just build the Transformers, they built them as consumer products and military hardware. Autobot and Decepticon were not ideologies originally. They were product categories on a factory invoice. In the G1 episode 5 Faces of Darkness in 1986, the Quintessons are revealed as the original creators of the Cybertronian race. The 5-faced judges. The voice was provided primarily by Roger C. Carmel, the actor who played Harry Mudd in the original Star Trek. In the aligned continuity, which covers Transformers Prime and the War for Cybertron games, the relationship is reversed. The Quintessons were created by Quintus Prime, one of the 13 primes. They are the creations, not the creators. In the IDW comics, an alternate version of Quintus Prime decided Cybertronian life was corrupt and made the Quintessons as replacements. In Transformers 1, the Quintessons are reframed entirely. They are the actual arch-enemies of Cybertron, the threat the primes died fighting. Sentinel's secret allies. At the end of the film, Optimus sends them a warning to stay away. And in Skybound's Void Rivals issue 25 in December 2025, the Quintesson War officially launched. Judge Naven, Premier Zalilak, full-scale invasion. The Quintessons are now the active threat in the current comic continuity. The Quintessons made the Autobots to sell as appliances and the Decepticons to sell as weapons. They are the reason Cybertron has a war at all. One small production note, the Quintesson Judge has been voiced by at least 10 different actors across G1 alone. Roger C. Carmel, Jack Angel, Paul Eiding, Corey Burton, and 6 more. One creature, 10 voices, depending on which face was talking. The Autobots and Decepticons are siblings. The Quintessons are the parents who sold them both. The Quintessons created the war. But there's a faction that fought it before either side existed. Starscream, Soundwave, Shockwave, the faces of the Decepticons. Across most continuities, they've always been Decepticons. In Transformers 1, they aren't. They're the Cybertronian High Guard, the 13 Prime's elite warriors, the original army that protected Cybertron before the Decepticons existed. When Sentinel led the Primes into a Quintesson ambush and slaughtered them, the High Guard saw it. They escaped. They lived in hiding for 50 cycles under Starscream's command, raiding Sentinel's forces from the wastelands. And when D-16, the bot who would become Megatron, defeated Starscream and took their leadership, he did not make them Decepticons. He branded them with the face of Megatron as Prime. The dead Prime he had idolized as a child, whose sticker he wore on his shoulder. That mask became the Decepticon insignia. Compare that to the G1 Seekers, the jet trine of Starscream, Skywarp, and Thundercracker. Compare it to Transformers Prime's Aerospace Extermination Squadron. Same character names. Completely different origins. The High Guard is the version where these characters are older than the war they're famous for. The Decepticons didn't exist until D-16 lost his best friend, killed Sentinel, and renamed an army that was already older than the war. Real-world side note, Steve Buscemi is the only actor who has voiced characters in 2 different live-action Transformers continuities. The Autobot Day Trader in The Last Night in 2017, and Starscream in Transformers 1 in 2024. Every Decepticon you've ever seen is wearing the face of a god they barely knew. The High Guard became the Decepticons. 3 centuries after the war ended, the Decepticons' descendants would inherit Cybertron. Predacons, Beast Wars Megatron's army. Tyrannosaurs and Wasps. The villains of the 1996 cartoon that introduced an entire generation to Transformers as adult mythology. Direct descendants of the Decepticons, born from a peace treaty. But the Beast Wars cartoon hid something. The Predacons fans hated weren't the real Predacons. The real ones were already in power, and they were running Cybertron. In Beast Wars in 1996, Megatron's renegade Predacons hunt the Maximals on prehistoric Earth. That's the cartoon. That's the version most fans know. But back on Cybertron, the Predacon Empire under Razorclaw had already surrendered to the Maximals after Predacus killed Predaking. That war was over before Beast Wars began. The Beast Wars glossary establishes what came after. The Predacon Empire was succeeded by the Predacon Alliance, governed by the Tripredacus Council, Cicadacon, C-Clamp, and Ram Horn. 3 Predacons publicly enforcing the Pax Cybertronia Treaty while secretly plotting to overthrow it. They were the government. They were also the resistance against their own government. In Transformers Prime, in the aligned continuity, the Predacons are completely different. Shockwave's clone-bred beasts. Predaking is uplifted to sentience and rebels against his creator. Same name, different species entirely. Every Predacon takes a beast mode, and most of them pick predators that hunt in packs. They were built to dominate even when they're losing. The Predacons didn't lose the war, they just decided to win it slowly. If the Predacons descended from one side of the war, the faction ruling above them descended from the other. Maximals, Optimus Primal, Cheater, the good guys of Beast Wars, and now the heroes of Rise of the Beasts. Direct descendants of the Autobots, post-Pax Cybertronia. There's a reason the Maximals were physically smaller. There's a reason their name was almost something else entirely. And neither reason is what fans assume. In Beast Wars in 1996, the Maximal Imperium rules Cybertron. Optimus Primal's exploration crew accidentally crashes into the past while chasing Megatron's stolen golden disc. That's the show. In Transformers Prime, a cancelled Season 3 storyline would have brought the Maximals back to a rejuvenated Cybertron. The plan was scrapped. The replacement was the Beast Hunters subline, which is the only reason Predaking exists in that continuity at all. In Rise of the Beasts, in 2023, Apolink, Optimus Primal, and Arizor return as Maximals, but explicitly not as Autobot descendants. The Bayverse continuity treats them as their own ancient race. Here's the production detail that reframes everything. The name Maximal came from a Hasbro brainstorm. Vincent DeLeva combined the cancelled G.I. Joe subline Manimals with the team marketing coordinator's car, a Nissan Maxima. Manimals plus Maxima equals Maximals. The faction that saved Transformers in the 1990s was named after a sedan. The bots who saved the franchise were named in a meeting after someone looked at the parking lot. The future of Cybertron got its name from a sedan. Maximals and Predacons fought their war on a distant planet, but the Autobots had elite warriors back on Cybertron who fought the dirtiest fights of all. Wreckers, Springer, Ultra, Magnus. The Autobots Black Ops unit appearing in nearly every continuity. They're the bots called in when the Autobots have already lost. But they're not a toy concept. They're a comic book invention by one British writer in 1986. In Marvel UK in 1986, Simon Furman created the Wreckers in a story arc called Target 2006. The original lineup: Impactor, the Leader, Springer, Topspin, Twin Twist, Whirl, Roadbuster, and two comic original conjoined twins called Rack and Ruin. Furman picked characters Hasbro wasn't using because he wasn't sure he'd get permission for the popular ones. In IDW in 2010, James Roberts and Nick Roche wrote Last Stand of the Wreckers, a 6-issue tragedy that IDW marketed as the highest-rated Transformers comic of all time. The Wreckers were sent to retake a prison. Most of them did not come back. In the Bayverse in Age of Extinction in 2014, the Wreckers are renamed Hound, Drift, Crosshairs. None of them die. Bay's version is the only Wreckers lineup in any continuity to walk away from a war intact. Springer leads them. He's a triple changer who flies into wars the Autobots have already lost and walks out with fewer friends every time. One continuity note worth flagging. Last Stand of the Wreckers originally planned to kill Springer, Perceptor, and Cup. Editorial only let writers James Roberts and Nick Roche kill 2. Per Roche's commentary, they chickened out of 1. The Wreckers are the bots the writers send in when they want to break readers' hearts. Here is what most fans never piece together. The Decepticons aren't the original villains. The Quintessons built them. The High Guard became them. The Predacons descended from them. Every faction in Transformers traces back to one decision, and Cybertronians have spent 40 years not knowing they made it. Every faction except one. Terrans, Twitch, Thrash, #Nightshade, Jawbreaker. The cast of Transformers Earthspark, the show that ran on Paramount Plus from 2022 to 2025. They look like Transformers. They act like Transformers. They fight Decepticons, but they aren't Cybertronians. They're the first Transformers ever born on Earth. They're made of cave water. They drink water instead of consuming energon. And they were created not by Primus, not by the Quintessons, but by Quintus Prime's Emberstone, bonded to 2 human children through cybersleeves. In the Earthspark pilot Sundown in 2022, Twitch and Thrash are born from Quintus Prime's Emberstone in a cave beneath Witwicky, Pennsylvania. 2 siblings, Robbie and Mo Malto, activate the stone. The Terrans crystallize from the water that touched it. TFWiki classifies them as their own species. Cybertron is Terran, hybrid organic and mechanical. A new kingdom of life. In Earthspark Season 4, the final season in 2025, Liege Maximo returns as the final villain, voiced by Nolan North. And here is what that means. Liege Maximo was one of the 13 primes. Quintus Prime created the Quintessons. Quintus Prime also created the Terrans through his Emberstone. The Terrans are technically the Quintessons' younger siblings, both made by the same prime, separated by millions of years. The Terrans are made of earth water. They are technically the Quintessons' siblings, and they have no idea. The newest faction in Transformers isn't a faction at all. It's a new kind of Transformer. There aren't 2 factions in Transformers. There never were. The franchise is 40 years of Cybertronians arguing about who they were built to be, and most of them are still wrong about the answer. Which faction did you forget existed? Tell us below. And if you want part 2 covering the Minicons, the Junkians, and the deepest cuts, say so.